Well, thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank AK and Neil for putting on this fabulous program today. We really appreciate the opportunity. And I'm very honored to be moderating this distinguished panel. I read all about the fascinating things that your three companies have done, and it really inspired me to wish that I was an entrepreneur instead of an academician. And I hope to find out from you your comments and your unique stories and expand my inspiration for all that you do. I've been to the Urban Air trampoline, and I have been to Bottle Rocket at the NTX Disruptor Series, but Raj, I haven't been to BioWorld, so I'm expecting an invitation. After reading about all of you, I did not know how creative you could be to come up with the concepts that you did. So let's start by having each of you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company.
Am I first since I'm next to you? All right, all right. No, thank you for having me. Michael Browning with Urban Air Venture Parks. We did start out as a trampoline park, but as with a lot of things where there's a lot of margin, there's going to be a lot of competition. So I quickly realized that in order to create barriers to entry and more of a moat around our castle, we needed to diversify from an attraction perspective and an experience perspective. And so we moved into becoming an indoor family theme park with a multitude of attractions. We're now the only other company in the United States other than iFly offering indoor skydiving. This year will be the nation's largest indoor go-kart track operator. So we moved into an arena that I like it when people come into our facilities and go, where are the trampolines? And we're like, yes, thank you. So we have 267 facilities across the United States open and under development. We have 60 just in the state of Texas. And so we're on track to have system-wide revenue of around $350 million this year, but it all started right here in Dallas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Calvin Carter, and thank you for being here today. So what is Bottle Rocket? Well, Bottle Rocket, I started Bottle Rocket 12 years ago, believe it or not, out of my house. And at the time, Steve Jobs was opening the iPhone to third-party developers. And so if you can put your brain back to a pre-App Store world, believe it or not, we did exist without apps at one time in our lives. If you can put yourself back then, that's when Bottle Rocket started. I certainly won't tell you that I had the vision to see an entire economy coming out of this new advancement in consumer technology, but I just knew that it was going to be a lot of fun, and I knew that it was something that I was already very passionate about. And so I followed my heart, started the business, and now it's a legitimate business today, 250 Rocketeers in Addison, and we have the pleasure to serve some of the largest companies in the country, building their primary way of doing business with very large parts of the population, and that is through technology and through apps.
Okay, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. What a great event, and I want to especially congratulate Neil and everybody for organizing it, and thank you for moderating as well. My name is Raj Malik. I'm the CEO of BioWorld. I founded the company in 2000. It was an offshoot of a wholesale and a retail business. The retail business I had in college, and it kept like backward integration. Today we are the largest or the widest distributed consumer products and licensed apparel and accessories. So we sell approximately 80 to 100 million units. The reason you haven't heard about us and the reason you haven't seen our products, most of our products are made under intellectual property agreements. So we represent every major studio, every small studio, every little app, YouTube influencers. So we represent about 400 different brands. We make consumer products all the way from apparel, accessories, wearable tech products, and sell it throughout the United States and Europe.
That's great, thank you. But you all didn't really tell me how you came up with your concepts. What inspired you?
For me, I've always been an opportunistic entrepreneur. My background is big data, customer analytics, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with companies like Buxton or Forum. I was doing those types of things in my college dorm room, and I was working with some high net wealth individuals out of Santa Barbara, California, in a private family office, and we were making a lot of investments, but it always spurred around understanding the consumer. And so when I can't claim to have come up with the trampoline park idea, but what I can claim is to have commercialized it using big data and customer analytics. So for us, every customer that comes into Urban Air is profiled, both demographically and psychographically, and we've used that information to make very meaningful decisions on where to place them. And so everything I do is just understanding the customer and trying to capitalize on opportunities.
Did you see a problem in the area of entertainment?
I did. I mean, growing up, I was a kid that went to Main Event and Dave & Buster's, and great products, right? But I just saw a void. So when we performed a gap surplus analysis on the entertainment space, we saw that everything was either arcade only or laser tag, bowling, arcade, and we said, man, like other than roller skating rinks, where can kids go to have fun? And we thought that it was a huge opportunity for kids to be active. I mean, we say kids come to Urban Air to celebrate big things, escape the hardships of the real world, and connect with other kids. And to be able to do that off of a screen and being active was something that we thought had a huge market opportunity.
That's great, thank you. What about you and Bottle Rocket? How'd you come up with that?
Well, like I said earlier, it's an absolutely true story that when Steve Jobs opened the iPhone to the third-party developers, he essentially opened up what turned out to be an entirely new and one of the fastest-growing and broadest-reaching platforms in technology in the history of technology. And of course, that led to other things like open platforms on Android, open platforms on Alexa and Google and things like that. So there's lots of advancements there. But the thing that really gets me excited about that type of thing is not necessarily the technology. As a technologist, of course, I love technology, but I love the idea of the impact it can make in a human's world. And there's so much like art in the application of technology in a way that is going to further the human condition. And that gets me really excited. And for those in the room who are in a similar business as me, yes, that means user-centric design, empathy, putting your user at the center of every decision you make, because they do become the bright North Star of the right thing to do.
That's great. What about BioWorld? How did you start? You have so many products.
Yeah, it's it was a early story. I came to University of Texas at Arlington as Dr. Karbari was here recently, and I was doing computer science engineering. I was a pretty lousy engineer and wasn't really very good at going to school either. And I started selling, of course I had to make some money, and I didn't really get a traditional job because it really wasn't enough to pay for my college or whatever, so I started selling door to door. And that was a pretty good gig. You could make $100, $150 a day, and you could work at your own schedule, and that led to me starting a small business and buying and selling product. And I was a big music fan at that time, and it was at around that time music shirts and paraphernalia was getting big, and I got into that, and that evolved into pop culture and sports and everything else that we call pop culture today. And one thing led to the other, and here I am 30 years later.
That's great. I was amazed by all the products that you do represent.
Thank you.
Next question would be to each of you. If you why did you choose DFW to start your businesses?
For me, I was born here, and I loved it. I've traveled all around the world, and I always tell people, aside from the 150-degree heat right now, there's not a better place to live. So I went to Grapevine High School, then I went to TCU, stayed around. We just love it too much to leave, so we're not going anywhere.
Good.
So we thought really long and hard about this in the early days. And it's because when you hear about Bottle Rocket or you come and visit Bottle Rocket, you immediately think this kind of feels like it should have been on one of the coasts, or certainly in California. But I actually think that one of the most important parts or ingredients to our success has been not being in that ferocious red ocean, but instead having a moat around ourselves here. So we're so centrally located. The best thing about Dallas is the airport. You can literally go anywhere direct within a handful of hours, and it is full of positive-minded, entrepreneurial spirited, even if they're not entrepreneurials, have an entrepreneurial can-do spirit, and they are people that like to put down their roots and stay for a while. And so because of that, we have a significantly more stable group of Rocketeers than I think we would ever have if we were in San Francisco or Menlo Park.
That's very interesting. I get your philosophy on that. What about you, Raj?
I agree with that as well. I mean, in the beginning, when I first started BioWorld in 2000, everybody was like, I talked to like major studios, and they would always be like, why Dallas? I mean, how are you going to find the talent? What are you going to do? Like, you're never going to be able to find the creative talent and everything else. But it seemed that, once we put our mind to it, we were developing it from the grassroots, and we hired kids from art institutes, and the Dallas Art Institute was a big recruiting ground for us. In fact, our first 3 employees from Art Institute are still with us today. So, you could always find the talent, and somewhere around the mid-2000s, it was easy to relocate people into Dallas. I think in the mid-2000s, around 2004 or 5 is when people were like, I think, a little tired of California. Dallas was getting a little bit of publicity in the California area. And from that point on, it got pretty easy to move people to Dallas. But in the beginning, when I came from India, it was just like any immigrant journey. One person, and one person has an uncle.
Yes.
And that's what kind of led me to come to Dallas in the first place. And I just ended up staying there. But you must have talked to my dad, because he asked me today, like, why did you choose Dallas? It's like flat, it's the same, it's around the world, same weather, it's hot.
Yeah.
So I just moved kind of 10,000 miles across. So, but it's been a great place and great home for us.
That's great. I love hearing that. Let's change gears for a minute and talk about entrepreneurial culture. So I'll ask each of you individually. Calvin, you have a culture-first approach to running your business. Tell us, what does that mean, and how was it implemented, and what's been the impact of that philosophy?
So first off, I'm a big believer in powerful statements, and one of the more powerful statements I've heard is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I'll use it in my own terms now. And what that means to me is that culture always should be the most important thing, because culture can transcend all of the problems, the challenges, the fears that we have as individuals and as groups of individuals, i.e. businesses. And when you have that sense of this company exists to help me make a difference in the world, to help me matter to the world, it touches on one of the, just the primary needs that we have as humans, and that's the need and the desire to want to make a difference in our short time that we have on this little blue planet. And when you approach everything you do, whether it be the holiday party, to the layout of the office, to the computers that we might use, to the chairs, to everything, all decisions, we put the Rocketeer at the center of that, just like we put our user in the center when we're designing software and interfaces and experiences for them. And I don't know if I'm right or not, but I really don't think you can create or construct an authentic culture. I define culture probably differently than the dictionary. I define culture as the energy between the people that are part of the culture. So the relationships, the back and forth, the things that are sometimes seen, sometimes heard, sometimes neither seen nor heard, but they exist. There's an energy that binds us. And so that place in between us, all those little gaps in between us, that's the culture. And so it's not something that's created from on high, it's something that naturally resonates from the people that are part of that culture. You can nurture it, you can feed it, I think you could influence it, but then you also have to respect it and honor it and let it grow in its own authentic way.
So I would assume that the early Rocketeers helped you develop that philosophy, the energy and the freedom to be really creative. Is that a fair statement?
An early Rocketeer?
Yeah.
Well, a couple things. First off, there's a really great group here in Dallas that a lot of businesses, I think, could really leverage more. We have a wonderful, I don't know what you call it, a think tank or curriculum or something called Stagen. So Stagen is run by someone named Rand Stagen, and it is conscious capitalism, empathy, the understanding of people, the plurality of our world, all rolled up in a very business-friendly way to absorb all of that, because these are all like soft, touchy-feely things that don't normally go alongside with successful businesses. But those businesses that do care about those things are proven to be more valuable than those that don't. But in terms of an early Rocketeer, there's this really great video. You're going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but if you YouTube first follower shirtless freak, you will see this quick 2-minute video, and it kind of says all you ever need to know about starting a company and building a following. Because the idea is that it's not the power of the founder, it's the power of the first follower, the first person to validate that entrepreneur's craziness, and then make others say, like, well, if they like what Calvin's doing, then maybe I like what Calvin's doing, and then that just hockey sticks up into the fact that I'm doing the same thing I'm doing, today that I was doing 12 years ago, and it was hard to find people, early on, and now there's so many people that love and fit within our organization. And so that first follower, his name's Matt Johnson, but that first follower is the one that really allowed Bottle Rocket to take off.
That's interesting. Thank you. Raj, you deal with consumer products, and talk to us about your culture Are you really a rebel? Does a consumer product company with products for children and teenagers alter your philosophy on culture?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Calvin did say he was going to take up most of my time. He didn't say he was going to take my mic as well. I just gave you my mic. You can have we have a very, I think somebody asked me today, I think Anita was like, I should come model some of your clothes, or maybe I should be wearing it. I was like, that would be a surefire disaster, because, then nobody would buy it, because, we're not, I'm not the cool factor that should be wearing our product. So, we have a very creative young staff. I mean, our business is, we principally say that it's catered to, we sell to kids, obviously through the parents, and obviously young adults, which by nature over the last 20 years, the definition has changed. We used to call our core demographic 14 to 18, and now even the 40 wants to dress like 18, and 50 wants to wear Star Wars. So everybody wants to wear, whatever the 18 or 20, and pop culture is so wide that you can have Star Wars fans or Batman fans all the way from 10 to 60. So the audience has increased significantly for our products. But the core of the company, as Calvin was saying, it really starts with setting the foundation. When we started getting young people from Art Institute and really developing that talent, they didn't really know product, and we had to train pretty much all of them, because none of the experienced designers from New York who were designing for Polo or Ralph Lauren were ever going to join us. So it was a very different kind of concept, and that really kind of builds a following of creativity, learning, and speed, and innovation, and everything else. Because we design over 10,000 different products. Sorry, not design, we design more, but we bring over 10,000 different products to market every year. So speed, innovation, learning new skills, all that is a big part of the culture. So innovation is really the key, and we are pretty much, other than buying 2 or 3 companies, most of the growth has been organic, and that has been a credit to the people who have really stepped up, acquired new skills. Nobody knocks on my door to say I have this challenge, because I'm usually okay, go ahead and do it, and when can we start, and let's give you all the tools that you need in order to get it done. So that's a big part of the culture. It'll always be a very family-based entrepreneurial company, but we are very aggressive in helping people learn new skills, acquire new skills, and keep moving forward.
That's great. Michael, you have a fun product services company for kids primarily, and parents, I guess. Is your company a fun company? Do you have employee challenges on the trampolines or on the racetrack? What's it based on?
Sure. So I believe in the power of culture. What I also believe is having yoga in the office is a perk, not culture. Having dry cleaning in the office is a perk, not culture. So I think too many companies try to do stuff inside the office, but then they wonder why no one's following them. We're well, that's just a perk, and people who don't like yoga aren't a part of that culture. So we do believe in culture. We have core values, and they're not just words on a wall, right? We say we hire and fire by these core values, and because we have 3 distinct audiences at the home office, we have our staff, we have the franchisees because we are a franchise system, and then we have the consumers downstream that come into the locations. And one of our core values is being fun, right? We think being at the top of the mountain is just as fun as solving the challenges along the way. We say the fun is in the journey, not in the arrival, because I'm the type of entrepreneur who likes to innovate as well. So just when I think we've gotten somewhere, I'm gonna pivot, and we're gonna change everything, and these people are gonna have to go figure that out. So I also think it's important, we've been doubling the size of the company every year for the last 4 years. And, you start out as a family, which many of you in this room probably started businesses. It's a family business, and then it moves into a tribe, which is your first followers, and then it's a village, and then it's a city, and it's a nation. And along the way, you have to reorganize your team. You have to continue to instill the culture. And it's important that it carries through the organization, because as you grow, communication becomes harder, and you have all these new people in, and so it's very fun. We have fun things in the office. I believe you can have just as a productive meeting over a game of ping pong as you can sitting in some staunchy conference room. So we do believe in some of the fun things like what's over at Bottle Rocket as well. And we believe that the fun flows down into the 10,000 employees that work at the parks and the franchisees that own them, and it has to start with us as leaders, and that's what makes real culture.
That's great, thank you. As entrepreneurs, you face some challenges as you have grown, and savvy entrepreneurs maneuver over and around these challenges in order to be successful. In today's world, tariffs seem to be a challenge. Raj, have you had tariffs be an obstacle for your company?
I think Michael
Sorry.
Yeah, this has been a pretty big year for, it's been very, very disruptive to our business this year. Obviously, there's national interest, and I really don't have, and I've argued this with many of my peers and even bankers and everybody else, I don't really have a problem with the tariffs. I just have a huge problem with tariffs by tweets, because it really is not really fair to the small business owners, the farmers, and even people who are our vendors in China. Because, if tariffs were passed for 4 years or 5 years, if it was a continuity, it'd be fine. You can make contingency plans. But obviously, we have been, when we are selling goods to a Walmart and Target, we are taking orders 6 months in advance. You're supplying millions and millions of units already with price tickets on it. I mean, all the things that nobody thinks about, but these things are already kind of price ticketed. It's not like there's enough labor and manpower in the U.S. to change 10 million price tickets once those goods land in the U.S. So it's really been very disruptive for us how do we react to it? How do we pass the price increase to our retailers? How do the retailers pass it to the end consumers? So it's really it's fluctuating. I mean, yesterday there was a tweet, it would go down from 25 to 30, 30 to 25, it's 10 to 15, but
yes.
Our vendors are scared to take an order next year because 15 could go to 30.
Yes.
So, it's just been a little, I think, not fairly disruptive, it's been hugely disruptive to a lot of people and businesses. So obviously we are having to deal with it, but it's not an ideal situation by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I agree. We move a lot of merchandise. We also have a fully integrated supply chain of all of our attractions, and we manufacture them all over the world, and a lot of our attractions that we manufacture come out of Nanjing. And so, I'll wake up on a really bad day and see that now I'm paying, that just cost me $2 million while I was asleep, and you're like, what? And my franchisees have already paid for these attractions that have been being manufactured for the last 4 or 5 months. Now we were at 4%. Now, as of 2 weeks ago, we're at up 19% on attraction packages that cost $1 million. Well, 19% increase on $1 million attraction landing. The franchisee's like, I didn't build that into my SBA loan, right? And so you're kind of like, oh, it's crazy, and so we're having to do some deals to try to fix that, but it's very disruptive. If it doesn't change, I'm going to hit the road in Q1 of 2020, and I'm going to go to Vietnam and Mexico, and I'm going to take my Yeah, India, anyone here has heavy manufacturing connections in India, and I would love the opportunity to talk to you. We got to hit the road and try to figure this thing out for the sake of our franchisees, or it's going to get passed down to the consumer, because they're signing 10-year leases on these properties, so an increase of 19% on their attraction packages it's real money.
Yeah, Calvin, how about you?
I just have an opinion about tariffs. Our business is impacted indirectly because it does impact our customers that we have, these large Fortune 500 companies. And because of that, they have to either pass it along, absorb some of it and pass the rest along, but that usually does create an environment of either cutting back a few things, and that might be in the area of technology, it might be in the area of customer service, it might be in growth. So it's just really bad for business. And so we're not paying tariffs directly, but we are part of the tariff vicious circle indirectly.
So you're like collateral damage.
Collateral damage, yeah. And I do agree that, we can overcome so many things. We just have to know what it is, and then we can overcome it. But when you have such inconsistent and erratic messaging coming from the leader of the free world, it really makes it difficult. And the interesting thing is it's making it difficult for his fellow citizens and his constituents. And yes, it's something that you can plan around long term, but if it hits you overnight between an order and a delivery and a 4-month, event package of $2 million, you can't plan for that. And so there's so much collateral damage in that sort of thing. And if they knew about it 6 months later, a year later, there would be a slight incline or that sort of thing, we adjust, we adapt. But when it's changing back and forth every day, it's just really difficult to make decisions, and then that's when people get paralyzed.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, if you all had it all to do over again, would you choose the path that you have? How about you, Michael?
I would have gone faster, I think. As with, I said it earlier, when there's high margin businesses, I believe our space is an arms race to real estate. So I would have probably gone a little bit faster, but yeah, I would absolutely have done it again. I'm having a blast, and it's a great business to be in. I think seeing people smile when you get out into the stores and the impact you're having on the community makes all of the other stuff that you deal with not as painful.
I think looking forward to going to the office or the facility is a key in the culture. What about you, Calvin? Would you do it again?
Yeah, I love what I do. I truly, truly, truly love what I do. And actually, I do what I love. It's really it's love what you do or do what you love. Do what you love is a more powerful statement. So I'm so lucky to have learned from a very young age of 9 when I touched my first Apple computer. I found something that made me excited and engaged and interested in the next day and the next day and the next day. And so I'm still that 9-year-old kid, learning, making mistakes, picking myself up, working with others, trying new things, going new places, meeting new people. So absolutely, I would do it all over again. And I think I would, something similar to what you said, I don't know if it'd be faster, but I think I would have believed in myself more. And that would have led me to do something, whether it be grow faster or, take on more challenging things earlier in the life of the business. I truly believe that at any point in time, any person on this planet is capable of doing 10 times more than they think they can do. We are our own self-limiters. And if we just get out of our ways sometimes and acclimate ourselves to failure and don't worry about embarrassment and shame and things like that, or at least it's hard not to worry about them, but to build a relationship with them so you can be with them and still be yourself, we all would get so much more done. Just by believing in ourselves, we would get so much more done. So I wish I believed in myself more, along the way.
Okay, Raj?
I mean, it's been a great ride. So no, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, it's a dream come true. I mean, I came to the Dallas area. I've really enjoyed a lot of success over 30 plus years. I've never had to really work. It's always been fun. I mean, I'm selling, we always say, I mean, we're selling pop culture product. I mean, how much more fun can it be? So, it's a very creative environment, even though I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a creative and I don't draw, whatever, but just the whole process of creative, fun. It's a great group of people, very young staff. We've got about 100, half our workforce out of our 400 people is creative. They wear their heart on their sleeve, very young, 20 to 25 years old. So it's just been a great ride. But yeah, in hindsight, maybe, if I had worked in a bigger company or maybe had some more different set of experiences, because I pretty much came up all the way through the ranks by myself. Maybe I might have been able to scale a little bit faster and grow faster and do some of the things differently and maybe a bigger vision maybe.
Well, last question, and you all have touched on this a little bit already. What advice would you give a 20-year-old you who wants to be an entrepreneur?
I always have to go first. Man. No, I think, the fear of failure is something that I think was brought up, and the first person to believe in me was my father, which will always mean a lot to me. But I had every bank laugh at me, every general contractor laugh at me, and so I think there's people out there with amazing visions, but just because you hear no doesn't mean you can't bring that to life. And I always tell kids in their 20s, like, you don't have to be old to be great. Like, you can do something great right now. You just have to fight through adversity and be gritty. And I think I let some of those people get in my head a little bit early, and which slowed me down. And I probably needed someone to give me that pep talk at that age.
That's great advice.
So I think for me, there's a great quote that I love. It says, the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. And if I could talk to 20-year-old Calvin, I would probably tell him that. And then I would tell him, so if you're going to be the best in the world at something, you got to pick the thing, and you got to stick to it, and it needs to be narrow enough that you can literally be the best in the world at it. And sometimes all it takes to be the best in the world at anything is just outlast everybody else. And if you're doing something you truly love, you are already already probably going to do it, even in the face of failure, even in the face of pain and embarrassment and things like that. So I think I would tell them, find your thing early on and just stick with it and never give up and never give on, and you will be the best in the world at it.
Great advice. Raj? Calvin, share.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you guys said is true, and I think my advice would be for me, what's worked is I enjoy what I do, and it's never felt like work. And a lot of people have told me, like, why don't you quit? Why don't you sell out? Why don't you do this? Everybody's trying to give me a different piece of advice. And I was like, it keeps me out of trouble. I love going to work, and my wife doesn't want me at home. So there, it's a perfect logic, right? So it wakes me up in the morning, I go to work. It's a great environment to work in. I've got great teammates to work with, and you gotta enjoy what you do, and part of it is you gotta love one thing, but you also gotta keep an eye around the corner. You always will have to adapt. The model that you start with, you're gonna have to keep readdressing it every year. You're gonna have to keep acquiring new skills. You're gonna have to reach out, learn from the people around you. You really have to be very perceptive to people and change, and quickly adapt to new market surroundings. So I think that would be the thing. And I think now I find a lot of entrepreneurs, even when I'm looking at a business plan, like 4 pages will be devoted to like the exit strategy. That's an immediate turn off for me, because it's like, if you're already thinking about exiting and you haven't even started, that's not very good. I mean, you really want to focus on what you're going to do and how you're going to build it into something valuable that somebody may want to buy. If you're already putting a multiple on it, then it kind of gives me a little bit of concern.
That's great. You all have been a wonderful panel. Neil, do we have time for questions? Okay.
We don't have that many mics to give out anymore.
Raj broke it.
Thank you very much for your inspiring stories, George Brody. Calvin, this is directed at you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Matt Johnson. I had the pleasure of coming to your office and you hosted us with Matt. And what struck me was we walked around your team and you couldn't put your finger on it, but you could really feel that there was this completely energetic vibe around your team. So Matt is big, always tells me, I work with him quite a bit, and he tells me about his early days and what you created. And I think that's the magic that I think most of the entrepreneurs here should really take away from, at least I can relate to it. So question for you is, how did Matt kind of, he tells me his version of the story, but how did Matt kind of help you with that part of the culture creation?
Again, I think it's the fact that Matt, by joining Bottle Rocket early on, he was Rocketeer number 2, if you consider me Rocketeer number 1. And we're talking about, like, we didn't have an office space. I was working out of my house. He was working out of his house. We would use Starbucks as our office to meet. All these sorts of things. We did that for a long time before we actually got a real office. But the thing that Matt did is he made it okay for other people to join Bottle Rocket. And he is absolutely integral with the values and the purpose and what's important and what's a bunch of BS, as I am. And so we're focused on the same types of things. And so there's like a resonance there. And then that resonance starts to attract other people into the organization that get excited about this resonance that's going on. And so that's why I think one of the reasons that the first follower is frankly more important than the founder.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Before you leave the stage, though, I had a front row seat to your socks. And I think that everybody should get to see you guys model your socks before you have to leave the stage. So with that, I'd like to invite Mahesh Shetty and Raj Kalyandur to come and thank our panel for joining us. Thank you for your continuing inspiration, your stories, and your your investment in North Texas. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Stay on the stage. We're going to get a picture.
You just gave us soft.
Wait, we're going to get a picture between them.
Next one will give you something. Over here.
Thank you.
It's heavy.
It's heavy.
Over here?
Yes, in the center, yeah.